down the field. Happy tossing dimes, cup $1 million deal. Fantasy football, better know it's real. Tune into the podcast, tell us how you feel. We be going live, best believe we talk.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football from Up North podcast. This is going to be our week 4 waiver wire episode. Me and Riley are going to touch on a bunch of other guys that we like for this coming week. Pretty much in priority that we're going to be taking them. We're just going to jump back and forth on, our favorite guys to pick up. And then later on in the episode, we'll just throw out, some quick hits with some guys that, are going to be worth an ad, maybe to stash or whatever. With bye weeks coming and injuries piling up, there's a lot of guys out there right now that are tempting for fantasy owners. So first, right off the bat, we're just going to go through some injury updates that did come through today, starting with Mac Jones. He looks like he's going to be missing about 4 to 5 weeks. So you're going to have Brian Hoyer is going to be the backup to Mac Jones. Dalvin Cook, good chance he plays this week. It's going to be with a shoulder harness, but I am going to guess he's probably going to sit at least a week or two, just based on his history of shoulder injuries. DeAndre Swift, moderate AC, so shoulder sprain as well, 2 to 4 week injury. Jamal Williams is out there in a few leagues. I think he is only owned in about, he's owned in about 60% of Yahoo leagues. So if he is out there on your waiver wire, he should be a top priority for anybody. Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, turf toe. We know his injury history. I'm not even going to try to guess when he's going to come back, because that could be one game. It could be never. Jarvis Landry, foot sprain. I mean, he's probably should be back, I would think, next week. Good chance he does play. David Montgomery, now that's another injury that haven't really heard any updates on that. It's going to be most likely it'll be early reports said about he should miss week 4. But we'll touch on who we're going to be. I think is most likely going to be both of our top priorities this week. J.K. Dobbins, he did come back last game this past Sunday, but I just think with his injury, I think they eased him in a little bit. I'm not too worried about him moving forward. So Riley, outside of that, why don't you start us off with your number one guy?
Yeah, so guy you mentioned earlier. I know you said 60% owned. He is 60% owned in Sleeper as of right now, but I'd go Jamal Williams as my top priority ad. We've seen him be productive year in, year out, even in Green Bay in that timeshare he was productive. Detroit, he's been fantastic in Detroit so far. So if he's that number one guy, he's gonna be a RB1 every week while Swift's out. So I'd definitely jump on. I'm all over Jamal Williams, number one priority ad.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you there. I had him as well. Not as my number one, but he was on my list. Like with Swift nursing that shoulder injury, it could like I said, this thing could linger on all year. We've already seen Jamal Williams as a very productive back in this offense, and I just think you can fire him right back up into an RB1 moving forward until Swift does come back. My number one guy, on the other hand, would be Khalil Herbert, even with the fact that Montgomery is expected to miss, as of right now, a week. I mean, he took complete advantage of his touches this last game when Montgomery left in the first quarter. 20 carries for 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery has never hit that 150-yard mark in his career. To me, that just shows you who the more explosive back is this year. He's my top waiver ad, especially if, Montgomery does expected to miss an extended period of time and should be a must start every week. I understand that the Chicago Bears offense is not great, but if you get a guy with that's as explosive as Herbert is, he's a type of guy that you're going to want to go out and get. You're going to probably pay a good chunk of money for him too. I'm ready to be aggressive and probably drop about 20-30% of my budget on him this week. And if Montgomery only misses a week, I do still think that if you still do get Herbert on the waiver wire, I still think he's going to get double touches every week. And even if Montgomery plays, Herbert could be a solid flex play. You can't ignore those stats.
Yeah, and especially I have Herbert as my number 2, by the way, but especially with Montgomery, he's had an injury history. He's had lots of injuries over the years. So Khalil Herbert will still be involved even when Montgomery does come back. And I think you're going to see a very 50-50 time split, if not in Herbert's favor, by the time Montgomery gets back.
All right. Who's your, well, you said he's your number 2. Who's another guy you want
That's
to
my
talk
number
about?
2. My number 3, you actually started him last week. Greg Dortch. Love this guy.
Yeah.
Watching Arizona games, this guy's always has the ball in his hands. Like I swear I see him with the ball more than I see Kyler Murray with the ball. Like Greg Dortch is just lighting it up all 3 weeks. I think he's like a top 20 overall fantasy player right now, which is crazy because I had no idea who this guy was to start the year. But yeah, I go Greg Dortch. Even with Rondell Moore possibly coming back, I still think he's developed some chemistry with Kyler Murray, and that offense can be pretty explosive at times. So I definitely pick up Greg Dortch for sure.
Yeah, for a no-name guy coming into the year, like you said, nobody knew who he was. Right now, he's averaging over 15 PPR points per game. Through the first 3 weeks, he's seen 23 targets on the year, and he's a proven wide receiver 2 behind Marquise Brown. And like you mentioned, with Rondell Moore coming back, even in a few weeks, you're going to see Hopkins coming back. I do think Dortch is going to. He obviously has a role in this offense. I mean, you can't forget the chemistry that he does have. A reliable option on a weekly basis, especially in PPR. He's going to be worth about 10 to 15% as well. And he's available in almost 80% of leagues right now. So definitely go out and get him, especially like I keep mentioning. I won't mention it anymore, but bye week's coming, starting, I believe it's week 6. So I mean, you're going to start to need to get some of these guys on your roster to cover, some of your studs that are going to be missing some time. My number 3, on the other hand, would be Alexander Mattison, running back of the Vikings. I mean, Dalvin Cook left the game, shoulder injury as well. Mattison stepped in, didn't do too much. I mean, 28 yards for a touchdown, 7 carries. But you got to remember what we've seen Mattison perform at a RB1 level in the past. Whenever Dalvin Cook's been out, I mean, he averaged over just 20 PPR points last year. While Cook was out, and he steps in immediately as a top 12 option, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have Madison as my number 4 guy. I'm not as high on Madison just because like he did put up some fantasy numbers while Cook's missed time, but he hasn't really been, when he operates as a number 1, he hasn't been as efficient as he is when he's operating as a backup. So that's the only reason I'm a little hesitant on him. And because we've seen Dalvin Cook play with the harness already. So I don't think he'll re-aggravate the injury. I know that's tough take, but I don't think he'll re-aggravate it. So I think Dalvin Cook should be good as long as he doesn't get another injury down the line. But yeah, I have him as my number 4 guy.
All right, give me another guy.
Romeo Dubs,
yeah, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, this guy, I have him as my next up on the list here. He's obviously Aaron Rodgers' favorite target right now, even with Lazard coming back, which is crazy because he was a 7th round pick this year, 6th round pick, super late. But he's outperforming Christian Watson. He's getting out targeted over guys like Alan Lazard, and I think that's just going to continue. And yeah, we've heard a lot of good things about him in preseason and training camp and stuff, and I think that just continues down the line for Green Bay.
Yeah, we know when Aaron Rodgers trusts a guy, he's going to continue to lock in on him. You look at how he was with Adams. Somebody needed to step up in this offense, and the rookie did so this week. So I mean, he led the team with 8 targets, 73 yards. Tough matchup next week against the Patriots, but you can still fire him up as a wide receiver / flex play against the Patriots, because I mean, the Rodgers is going to have to hit somebody, and he's going to be the guy. So I got another receiver to talk about on mine, Zay Jones of the Jaguars. This guy just continues to be around every year. To be honest with you, I didn't even know he was on the Jaguars up until training camp, and I was like, oh shit, he's still around. But week 1, he stepped up. Week 2, didn't do too much, and that's why I didn't talk about him last week on waivers, because he didn't really make any noise. But now all of a sudden week 3 comes into play, led the team in targets with 11, caught 10 for 85 yards and a touchdown. Now let's be realistic. Numbers don't lie. Jacksonville looks like the type of team that's going to just be Jacksonville looks legit. Like, let's be real. I mean, the running game's going, with Christian Kirk there. Zay Jones now steps in, he has a role behind Christian Kirk. And the fact, even if week 2, he didn't have a great game, he was still targeted 9 times. So coming into this week, he was already had a 19% target share. So, and currently, I'll talk about Christian Kirk real quick. Christian Kirk in PPR is the wide receiver 6. Zay Jones is the wide receiver 24 right now in PPR. So, I mean, he's getting targets. He's getting the looks. If you need a guy that's going to produce as a wide receiver 3, but he's got wide receiver 2 upside, Jones is going to be worth an ad for you.
Yeah, I like Zay Jones this week too. I obviously still think Christian Kirk's that number 1 guy there.
Oh, 100%.
But they've been throwing the ball a ton in Jacksonville, and I think that's just going to continue down the line. And yeah, Zay Jones has that. He's kind of that safety net. He kind of gets those shorter targets, while Christian Kirk gets those kind of like deep bombs. So I think in PPR, especially, Zay Jones is definitely worth an ad. Possible flex play too. And next week, actually, I have him projected for a big game next week because they play Philly. I think Darius Slay is going to probably cover Christian Kirk all night, and that just leaves Zay Jones open for all those targets next week.
Nice, I like that. All right, you got somebody else? Sorry about that.
Yeah, my last guy I just want to mention, obviously not a top priority because Michael Gallup's coming back, but Noah Brown, he's been silently very good in this Dallas Cowboys offense, even with a Cooper Rush-led team. And he looks exactly like CeeDee Lamb on the field. I don't know if you've noticed that, but has the dreads and everything. Like, I think it's CeeDee Lamb catching the ball every time he gets a target. But Noah Brown's definitely up there. I think he got 9 targets tonight, something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that.
7 targets tonight, and then last week he had a big game, 20 fantasy points. I think he has that value even with Michael Gallup coming back, and especially with Dak Prescott rumored to be back by like week 6 or something like that.
I did hear today week 5. I heard week 5 is the date. So another guy I'll touch on real quick myself is I didn't want to start him anywhere this week, and it kind of backfired on me, but is Russell Gage. I mean, we look at this pass catching, Tampa Bay's pass catchers. Evans, yes, was suspended, but you still got, Chris Godwin dealing with injuries, Julio Jones. Who knows when he's coming back? We know how his history goes with injuries. And the fact that Gage, he basically took charge last week, caught team high 12 targets, or 12 of his 13 targets for 87 yards and a touchdown. Not saying you're going to go out and spend a whole ton of money to get him, but he's the type of guy that you do want to stash on your bench, especially knowing the fact that this Tampa Bay receiving core does get banged up quite a bit. And if one of these top guys is out, Gage is going to produce with Tom Brady.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I don't know. I'm always a little hesitant in the offense, but with that many guys out, like, Gage is like their only viable starter in the offense besides Fournette. So, yeah.
You got another guy?
No, that was it for my guys, actually. You got
okay. More? Yeah, we just got a few guys I just want to touch on real quick. Can't forget about Devontae Parker, the Patriots. I know Mac Jones is out. He did build that chemistry, but we finally saw that big breakout game for him with the Patriots. Over 150 yards yesterday. Only caught 5, but he was targeted 10 times. So just something to keep an eye on. Even with Jacoby Myers coming back, you still got Nelson Aguilar there as well. I do think Parker is slowly starting to make his way up that depth chart, and they're going to start producing a little bit on a weekly basis.
Yeah. I think when Jacoby Myers comes back, he'll take that target share back. But Devontae Parker, definitely just stash him on your bench for now. In terms of quarterbacks, if any of you guys are needy for a quarterback, obviously there's no big time ads right now, but I'd say Trevor Lawrence is only owned in 58% of leagues. He's definitely worth a stream, especially when they're throwing the ball that much.
He looks good. And don't forget right now neither. I thought you'd be bringing him up immediately. Kenny Pickett of the Steelers. It's just a matter of time before he's going to take over in Pittsburgh. So there's no reason to sleep on him now. I think you should just go out and get him, stash him, because I give it maybe another week. And, to be honest with you, I give it maybe a half a game. Trubisky doesn't start performing, next week. I think he could get pulled early, and we could see the Kenny Pickett jump in there. Another quarterback is Jared Goff. Pardon me. He's going to continue making appearances on waiver wire articles up until, he does get over that, threshold of like 60% ownership. But I mean, you look at his numbers, the first 2 weeks, they're great. Last week, not crazy good. I mean, he was efficient, but they did score 3 touchdowns last week, but only 1 through the air. But he's got a favorable matchup next week against the Seahawks. So, I mean, if you are quarterback needy, he's my top quarterback streamer next week.
Oh yeah, for sure. And another guy, not a long-term ad, but just for maybe a stream next week or something. Geno Smith. He actually had a good game against Atlanta last week, and if they're playing Detroit this week, I think could be a little shootout for Geno Smith.
Yeah. We haven't really touched on any tight ends. There's a few tight ends I want to talk about real quick. Tyler Conklin of the Jets. Back-to-back weeks, he's been dynamite. 8 targets again this week, 84 yards. I mean, I'll take that any day from a tight end, especially in PPR leagues, if he's getting targeted that much and catching that many balls. So, I mean, he's a high-end streamer week to week, and he's playing a struggling Pittsburgh defense next week. Just somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and my only other tight end, there's not a lot of tight ends on the waiver wire right now, but keep an eye, maybe don't add him, but keep an eye on Jelani Woods if his target share increases. 2 touchdowns last week. He had yet to have a target before that, but just keep an eye and see if his target share goes up in that offense.
That he scares me only because the fact that if you looked at those stats last week from Indy, they had all 3 of their tight ends playing that game. Kylan Granson was out there, Mo Ali Cox, but it was Jelani Woods did get those important targets in the red zone, and he's a big boy. So, like I said, like you just said, yeah, if he's going to be his target share goes up and he starts to see the field a little bit more, definitely a guy to add. Yep. Another quick guy I just want to touch on, J.D. McKissick. We did see a different Washington Commanders team last week, I keep saying last week, on Sunday. Negative game script. It was McKissick was the one that was getting targeted. He had 9 targets against the Eagles, caught 6 of them for 32 yards. Stats wise, not great, but PPR leagues, I think moving forward, I think we are going to see a lot more of these negative game scripts for Washington. And we know that Wentz is going to throw the ball, and we know that Gibson's not the answer in the backfield as far as pass catcher. Brian Robinson's going to be coming back as well eventually. But I think J.D. McKissick still has that role as that pass catching back and should see at least, 5+ targets a game moving forward.
Yeah, and the last guy I just wanted to briefly mention, Mac Hollins. He had a huge game last week. I'm not rushing to the waiver wire to blow my fab on him, just because Hunter Renfrow will be back most likely next week. And that offense is so unpredictable right now with Devontae Adams not getting a lot of targets. But keep an eye on Mac Hollins. He's looked good these past 2 weeks. So, yeah, that's the last guy I just wanted to touch on there.
Right on. That's awesome. Yeah, well, we touched on, I don't know how many guys we listed off there, but we gave you guys a ton to look at moving forward, and we'll continue to do this every single week. I mean, this is good content real quick for you guys, especially, getting this episode out early for you during the day before you have to make your waiver claims. So thanks again for listening. Appreciate all the support from everybody. We'll talk soon. Peace.